obviously, you know that many dancers, we face challenges along the way, along the journey from pre-professional career to our professional career. And I really would love to hear from you about what challenges you faced in your, roadmap towards where you are now. I know, and please fill us in a little bit, but I do know that you went from the ABT route to Boston Ballet route. So why don't you get on everything?
So I started going to the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis School ABT when I was 14. And then when I was 16, I got into the main company. So it was a very quick route for me. I don't know, it was timing, and they needed girls. And yeah, so it was a little bit overwhelming at first, joining a big company at such a young age with so many older dancers at the time. So at the time when I was 16, I was able to eat whatever I wanted. Didn't really think about nutrition in a way that would be to fuel my body. I was just like, oh, I can eat a piece of pizza, a cheeseburger, whatever. And then a couple of years into the company, I realized, my body was going through changes and I couldn't do that anymore. And I realized my performance level and performance in class and on stage was just not as up to par as the rest of the dancers or what I wanted to be. And I got really, really hard on myself, comparing my body to other dancers that have been there longer and dancing longer. So I kind of took a really drastic measure and just kind of stopped eating a lot. So I'd be so exhausted, I couldn't do as much as I wanted to in class, and I felt tired all the time. And I ended up getting injured. I sprained my ankle multiple times, just because I think I was so fatigued. So I realized that probably wasn't the best route. So I started to see a nutritionist on the side. And it was really hard for me because actually my bones were just not happy. I could feel every time I landed from a jump that I felt like my shins were gonna break.
Ton of really good points here.
Yeah.
The comparisons, right? It's almost and it kind of flows into my next question, which was, if we could pinpoint a time in your dance training when the thought that of what I was putting onto my plate is actually having an impact on my body. And it sounds like for you, that somewhat resulted from you comparing yourself to just the other dancers who had been at the company longer, and you were young, so maybe there wasn't someone there to tell you that what you see is not necessarily what you're looking at with another dancer doesn't necessarily mean that she's not eating anything. You know what I mean? What we see on the surface is not necessarily what is actually happening in a dancer's life and in a dancer's body and how they're eating. But I raise a really good point because you entered the company so young. Mm-hmm. You necessarily didn't maybe make that connection. So for you, it just made sense that, these dancers look this way. That means maybe they're not eating. Maybe I shouldn't be eating too, right? And along that, you then realized and experienced firsthand that even though maybe some days you felt lighter and translating that to feeling better, you realized that your bones suffered, you suffered injuries. So there were consequences to that.
Yeah, totally. I didn't really have a good model. No one was really helping me with it at my old company. A lot of the times it was mainly just them telling me that I needed to change the way I looked, and without giving me the right assistance to do so, which I think is why I freaked out on my own. And I was like, oh, this is how I'm gonna do it, the easy way. But the easy way is not the best way. So
no, that's a really good point. When we just don't have that guidance, and I think something that I see with a lot of young dancers is that they fall unhealthy behaviors, but it actually stems from good intentions. The intentions are that you want to do well in your classes and succeed in this career that you're putting so much effort mentally and physically towards, and then without realizing it, you fall into unhealthy and unsustainable habits, which then could result in injuries. So now, yes, in the shift that you started to realize that wasn't working and that actually wasn't a good idea?
Yeah. So I was about like maybe 4 or 5 years into the company, and I finally found, once I saw like a nutritionist and seeked help, the right help, I realized that I have to eat a good breakfast that has a lot of protein. Carbohydrates are important. Like, don't stay away from, like, it's okay to have a piece of toast. So I made sure, like, I actually had a meal plan that I wrote down every day to make sure that I was getting enough. I wasn't crazy about calorie counting. It was just making sure that I was having enough to replace the amount of like calories that I was burning that day in rehearsal,
Sure.
because that's like really important. So yeah, I finally found like this regimen of eating, and then unfortunately, like my body, I'm very hypermobile, so I'm always prone to injury. So I had a really kind of major injury that took, or actually 3 injuries in a row put together. So that took me out for about like a year, almost a year and a half. I sprained my ankle pretty badly, and then that same, I think I went back too quickly. So that foot, I got a stress reaction, which
Sure.
brings me back to when I wasn't eating the right foods. I think that just accumulated like a weakness in my bones. So that's one of the major reasons why I want to stress that eating healthy and having the right amount of nutrients to support, like, we do such crazy things every day and jumping, and you need to have enough like calcium, vitamin D to support your bones. And I didn't get that, so I think all of that just accumulated over the years and then led me to a stress fracture in my foot. Even though I had started eating well, it does still, my bones were not like up to
So
the
this is really important for young dancers here, because when we are in our late teens and even early 20s, we are in what's called our peak bone building years. And you take advantage of those years, you set yourself up for stronger bones by the time you hit your late 20s and 30s. So I think it's important to realize that, for the younger dancers out there listening, you're likely in your peak bone building years now. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of the fact that what you do now is actually going to impact your ability to have a sustainable and long lasting career down the road. Dance is very intense, it's very active. But sometimes younger dancers don't see that, and they don't think that dance is as active and as intense as it is. I hear about dancers saying, "Oh, well, I stand around during rehearsals, and I don't know, it's so intermittent, it's so starting and stopping." But it's important to realize that ballet and dance in general is a very intense exercise, and we really have to fuel and, like you said, replace what we're burning.
Yeah. Like for students, like say you only have like 1 or 2 classes a day, doesn't mean that you should not put enough nutrients or eat enough, because you want to be dancing for a long time. Like what I did was not smart when I was younger, and I wasn't really dancing as much as I am now. When you first join a company, obviously I was eating so little because I was like, oh, I'm not doing enough. But then that will definitely impact you when you start to get into the company more and you get to do more things. Like then you realize how important it would be to make sure you're getting enough nutrition throughout your entire career, because it affects the way you dance, or it affects how long you'll be able to dance injury free, um,
Just to kind of go off the questions a little bit, because I think a lot of dancers will really appreciate this. You said that you were injured and it really set you back somewhat for about a year.
yeah.
I think right now with COVID, everyone is slowly starting to get back, hopefully, if they're lucky. But a lot definitely feel stuck, and they feel that they are being held back right now because of what's going on with the pandemic, or let's just say an injury. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what did get you through that time when you were injured?
So what really got me through was my family. I really have a great support system. So usually when I was injured, I went home to my parents' house, and they always took care of me, but also like kept me motivated and kept telling me not to give up, because you work so hard for this profession. You can't let one or two injuries stop you from achieving what you want. Um, because I wouldn't be here where I am right now today without any of those injuries. Because
Hmm.
after every injury, you get smarter and you learn how to take care of your body better. Um, like like with my stress fracture, I realized that I needed to make sure to eat better and keep that up so I can dance longer. Um, yeah,
You know,
so yeah,
that's
that's basically.
such a good point. I was actually just talking to a client about this, a dancer who had struggled with some disordered eating in her recent past and has really been working hard to just develop a healthier relationship with food and not restricting and actually learning to fuel her body. And we were both saying how it's very rare for a dancer to not have any level of disordered eating in their past. You know, we've all kind of like dipped our toe in this world of disordered eating at some point.
Yeah.
And even for myself, I realized that having that experience really made what I do today. And because we learn from it, we learn from those experiences,
Yeah.
how better our performance, and in your case, strengthen your performance and strengthen your bone health, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm actually pretty grateful for all my injuries, even though at the moment they all sucked like a lot, and not being able to do what I loved every day was, and seeing other people do, all these performances and I couldn't be a part of it, was really disheartening. But it made me being away from the studio and stage made me realize how much I wanted to dance.
Sure.
So, just take every injury. It might feel like the worst thing in the world, but be grateful for it, because you'll always come out of it stronger and smarter.
For the most part, dancers have had to learn how to keep themselves somewhat in shape, right? While staying,
Mhm.
doing bars in like 2 by 2.
Yeah, yeah,
How to make do with a situation that is absolutely completely out of our control. Now, with an injury, we have some bit of control over it,
mhm.
especially, I hate to repeat myself, but for you younger dancers out there, realizing that you need to take advantage of the time now while you're young in getting proper nutrition in and eating enough and not falling into such restrictive eating behaviors.
Yeah. Um, During COVID, I kind of like treated it like I was injured again, sort of. But like making sure that I still kept to a schedule, because I think a lot of us, I mean, I'm guilty of like sleeping in when it first started, like till maybe 1 p.m. But after like I took a little bit of time off, because we were rehearsing a lot right before it happened and performing. But once that rest time was over, I made sure to give myself a right schedule, still eat a nice breakfast, have like good 3 meals every day. Or if I wasn't hungry during the day because I wasn't doing as much, I still would make sure to have little snacks. Um, but yeah, I was just kind of making sure that I would take a class in the morning or do some sort of Pilates, go outside in my yard and do some workouts. But I think a schedule is like really, really important to keep during this time. Because it's really, if you don't, or if I don't, I get really depressed. And then when I do have a schedule, I feel so much better about, the whole day.
Dancers in particular are very used to structure. They're very used to having some bit of framework in our day.
Yeah.
So having that framework during a time where, again, so much is out of control, when we have so much more time in our hands. But
Yeah.
now, outside of that, now that you're starting again, did you say next week you're starting?
Yeah, next Monday we're starting.
Very nice. That's great. So talk to me a little bit about how you plan to really just get back, whether that's physically and or even with your food. Kind of like, do you plan to maybe start a new routine with like your meals and your snacks? How is that going to go?
So these past few weeks, I've actually been kind of practicing, or like I've tried to be on my feet most of the days. Like we were able to use the studios one by one. So I've made sure to like do a class every day, and then I would go to the gym or do a yoga class. And I always wake up. I automatically wake up at 6:30 or 7 a.m. So I just make sure to have a nice breakfast no matter what I'm doing that day. What you have for dinner, I realize really affects the way you feel in the morning. Because if I don't, I realize if I don't have enough for dinner the night before, I wake up super groggy and don't have, like, my muscles feel really fatigued and tired. So I make sure that I always have a good dinner, especially now when we're going to start back
Sure.
with full days.
So many dancers think that what they eat on just one specific day impacts them on only that one specific day, but it's so important to realize that our food choices really come into play over time. And your recovery meal, or like that dinner, big dinner meal, is going to play a role in how you wake up the next day, and how, especially during performance season, where you're going to wake up, have early class, day of rehearsals, performance, constant back to back, and making sure that you are building those balanced meals. But something that I hear that is just obviously very common with dancers is not really having the time for a big lunch.
Yeah.
I think it's important to realize, like, that's okay, and splitting lunch up into these smaller, more manageable snacks throughout your day that's what seems for you to be more manageable.
Yeah, I just like snacking throughout the day. Like, because I get highs and lows during the day, and when I feel a little low, I just have a little something to eat. Yeah, so next week when we start, we're probably gonna still start at the same time in the morning, but because of the whole COVID situation, we're in pods. We're only working 80% of what we normally will be working, which I think is good to start, because a lot of us haven't been able to, take full class every day. I was really lucky when I was at home in Connecticut for the first few months after the pandemic hit. I was able to have access to a studio on my own. So I was lucky in that sense, that I kind of tried to keep the same schedule of, like, staying in shape. But then there was a point in time where I did take a little bit of time off from dancing because I feel like I needed it. I felt a little burnt out. So
it sounds like you somewhat, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhat balance fueling yourself with a schedule and making sure you, like, plan your snacks and plan a good breakfast, good dinner. But then there are other times where you are more listening to your body, and a day, for example, where you are dancing more intensely, you might need to eat more. You might need to have more snacks throughout your day, or just substance in your snacks. Do you feel like there is that balance between schedule and having a framework versus feeling differently, more intuitively?
yeah, I mean, completely. For example, when we were rehearsing Giselle last year in September, I was rehearsing so much. I was doing Mirta, and then I was also doing all the corps de ballet roles. So every day I would sweat so much, and I would be working out, like, constantly. So I made sure that I had to eat a little bit more in order to, maintain my energy levels throughout the day, especially after, an hour-long Mirta rehearsal where I'm just exerting so much energy. I needed to always have, like, a banana or something after that specific rehearsal to move on for the rest of the day. And that goes for, any other difficult piece that I've done in the past. I always make sure that after a rehearsal where I sweat a lot, I always make myself have a snack or eat something, because I know if I don't and I go straight into the next rehearsal, I will feel super lightheaded, just not be able to, do what I want, and more probability of me getting injured.
Talk to us a little bit about just your journey on how you've come to accept your body and accept what it does for you as a dancer.
Yeah. So there was a time where, when I wasn't eating a lot, where I was obsessed with what I weighed, and I would weigh myself way too often. And that just kind of really made me super stressed out. It gave me anxiety. And once I kind of got out of that rut and fixed that, I realized that it's okay to have a nice meal and gain a pound or two. It doesn't matter. Like, that's just your body's way of, you digest the food. Obviously, you're going to weigh more after a meal.
you being able to enjoy food and go out with friends and socialize and not have to Google every calorie that is in your food or have to worry scale's going to say the next day. Maybe those pounds are actually worth your happiness and worth the sustainability again of your career, because at the end of the day, when we have those obsessive behaviors, they either lead you to injury, which you saw, or they lead you to burnout, which is what happened to me in my past. So whether you're burnout, those behaviors are not serving your dancing.
Yeah, exactly. When I wasn't eating right, I was always avoiding going out to dinner with my friends. They wouldn't say anything, but I know they were concerned, which made me feel even more uncomfortable and not want to go out anymore. But now, I love going, like, that's my favorite thing, is going out to dinner with my friends and family, and I don't worry about, oh, I can't have this much. I'm just going to enjoy the meal, and I do so much every day, so it doesn't really, if I stay active, I feel fine.
Yeah. Just such a great point. Like, for dancers to realize that they can enjoy food. It's important for dancers to reassess what food is in their lives, and it doesn't always have to be just for the sake of performance. It can also be for the sake of like our mental and emotional happiness.
Yeah, exactly.
So my final question, Paulina, and it's a pretty general one, is how would you define what a healthy dancer is?
Don't compare yourself to other dancers' bodies. Everyone's metabolism is different. Everyone's body shape is different based on genetics, other factors. So what you make sure that you get enough nutrients, enough vitamins, and realize that what you eat really affects the way you feel in class performance. And eating right will lead to a longer career, less injuries, you feel happier, pretty much what my advice is. I always had trouble comparing myself to other dancers, and that was really detrimental to my whole body image. And I finally learned to just accept the way my body is and to love my body, and that my body is my home and I need to take care of it.
I love it. Thank you so much. You've given us such great insight. A lot of younger dancers out there that will really benefit from just hearing what happened to you, also how you got through injuries and the pandemic. So thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Yeah, of course. This was so fun. I'm so glad to share my insight.
Good. Well, we will be in touch, okay?
Yes, okay. Thank you so much.